minute epic story that just might be the brand's best World Cup ad in the last 20 years. Today, my colleague Grace Snelling is back for our monthly Old Man and the Z episode. I'm the old man, she's the Z, and we'll be digging into this Chalamet ad as well as where it fits into Adidas's 21st century World Cup pantheon. But first, we're going to break down some of our favorite overall brand work that we're seeing right now, which kind of runs the gamut from Adidas Super Shoes to a very swooshy new ad from Yeti. No time to be wasted. For the Fast Company Podcast Network, I'm Jeff Beer, and this is Brand New World. Okay, before we go into the deep dive on Adidas World Cup spot, our first segment is all about the work, where Grace and I talk about the brand work from the past month that has caught our eyes and why.
Hi, Jeff. I want to switch it up this time. Can you tell us your favorite piece of work first?
My first pick is a brand new ad from outdoor cooler, accessory bags, what have you, brand Yeti. It's called 4 letters, and you can see why. You got weight, you got run, you got bail, and Yeti. I mean, they're all 4 letters. And I kind of feel like, okay, so late last year, Yeti hired the ad agency Wieden & Kennedy. They of Nike, Ford, DoorDash, McDonald's fame. And to me at the time, this felt like a match made in heaven, especially for a brand like Yeti, who was looking to scale up its advertising footprint without losing its kind of outdoor action soul. Most of Yeti's work has kind of been a direct tie to the brand, typically telling like a personal story or chronicling an adventure of one of their many ambassadors across like surfing, hunting, fishing, all kinds, and now into like major league sports. This, I think, manages to do that, but it feels like a very, in the best possible way, like a very old school Nike vibe. I don't think I'm actually imagining this, because in the brand's press release about this, it says, and I'm quoting here, it turns the Yeti logo into a badge, flexible enough to represent anyone with a relentless drive to chase what they love. So this overall campaign is going to be 4 films. There's going to be some made with found footage from ambassadors, from their ambassador community. I don't know. I really like this, despite there's a little niggling about like just how Nike it feels, but it did. I mean, I like those old Nike ads, so I don't know, but it's new. It caught my eye, and I kind of love it. What did you think of it?
I thought what the ad was doing with the 4-letter words was really strong in terms of, obviously people know Yeti, but it almost felt like this moment for the brand to really make its name mean something even more to people.
Okay.
But I don't know if I'm like super familiar with Nike's old ads that you're referring to. I was wondering if you could tell us like what specifically about this ad called back to those in your mind. Like, was it something about the way this montage was shot or the types of imagery it was showing? Because honestly, to me, I was kind of like, I liked that, the 4-letter word concept, but with the montage, I was almost like, I feel like we've seen this a lot of times. I'm not sure how fresh it felt to me, but maybe that's not a con.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think from the Nike point of view, it's not so much like, oh, this is a direct visual kind of, calling or knockoff or whatever. I do feel like I think it's kind of like the pacing. Like there's been Nike ads in the past. I think the one that first came to mind for me a bit was they did this awesome split screen spot a number of years ago where it was like you'd have halfway through the screen there'd be like a baseball player and they'd like run, and as soon as they crossed over the center they'd be like a sprinter. Like, and it's all real footage of athletes, and it was, I mean, a great spot and a good narrator and all that. But sometimes the Nike ads that it made me feel like that was maybe one of them. But there's this pacing where it's like duh, 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 and it's sort of constructed as a bit of a pep talk or like building adrenaline, and I felt like this is what this was going for.
Yeah, I could feel my heart rate rising as I was watching it. So I
That could
think
have
it was
something to do with the
successful in that
actual
way.
beats in the spot too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, when I spoke to when they announced their partnership last year, I talked to Pierre Geoffrey. Pardon me, Pierre, if I'm mispronouncing your name, but he's an executive creative director at Wine and Kennedy, and he was saying that once they came out with the partnership, the agency kind of went around and talked to all of Yeti's brand ambassadors, which is like, or as many as they could. And these people are all, I mean, you've got professional, like Major League Baseball athletes to John Florence, the surfer, to, all kinds of different people. And he said one thing stood out, and I'm quoting him here. He said, "There's something that is so true about their product, about the ambassadors, about the people, and about the way we would work together, which is this idea of a rational commitment. That's something that you can really connect with no matter what your pursuit is." So like just like tying all these different wide, because Yeti is a pretty broad brand, much like Nike, that the thing that the thread between them all is this irrational commitment. And I thought the work they did back then for the holidays and this did a pretty good job of sort of exposing or shining a spotlight on that thread. You don't feel sold.
It definitely wasn't bad. I don't think it was my favorite, but I like to see where they're going with, especially like turning the Yeti name into something more than it's been in the past, if that makes sense. Like almost giving it that Nike treatment of making the brand name more central.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, I think it is a process, but I do think that Yeti's not even used to doing like major ads like this in a sense. They've done some stuff, but a lot of it, at least for my focus, was always on their films and like their little mini doc films, which were always great. This is just a new vibe for them, but so far I'm liking it. Okay. Tell me about the first piece of work that you want to talk about.
Okay, so I have sort of a sparklier piece of news from a brand that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure many women who were once young girls around the world, and that is Claire's. So the company just launched its first new campaign since getting acquired by private equity back in August, which is kind of a big deal because if you're not familiar with what's been going on with Claire's, it's been on like a really wild financial and reputational roller coaster for I think at least several years now. So just to give the spark notes on that, Claire's had like a huge retail footprint in malls in its heyday, and that's how it sort of attracted its main customer base. They do like ear piercings and jewelry for girls. I got my ears pierced there and they're really messed up and I can never get earrings in, but I'm not holding it against them at all. That became kind of a burden for them when mall culture died down. And so I believe maybe their first bankruptcy was 2018-ish, but they've had to file for bankruptcy twice and shed hundreds of stores. And then this recent acquisition came along right at the end of 2025. Actually, side note, our colleague Liz Segrin is like an expert on this whole saga. So look up her reporting on it if you want to read more in depth about it. But essentially, this new campaign is like Claire's first reintroduction to customers after that whole saga. And I think this campaign gives us an initial hint at where the brand is trying to go next. It's called a girl SMR at Claire's, a girl's ASMR. I don't really know how they want you to pronounce that, but basically, yeah, it's it's a bit of a tongue twister. It's targeting Gen Alpha by blending Claire's like glittery, glitzy products with the world of ASMR, which is a genre on TikTok and YouTube that are videos designed to give you like this particular tingly feeling or make your brain feel good, basically.
Here's a question as someone who's, at least historically familiar with Claire's personally. If you weren't reporting on business, if you weren't reading Fast Company, if you were just, did not, I don't know, say care about Claire's, the business story, would you have even noticed that anything had changed or was up with that brand? Because I got to say, like, for myself, I have a Gen Alpha daughter, and Yeah, lots of Claire's stuff in my house, and
Really?
I've definitely spent enough time like waiting around a Claire's as browsing is happening. And I mean, like we travel whenever we've traveled, like it's funny because there's a Claire's locally, and she's gone there, and then visiting family in London in the UK, and like saw Claire's, wanted to go in. I'm like, I'm not going into this Claire's. Are you out of your mind? Do we have a Claire's where we live? But like there didn't seem to be uh like a drop off, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not in New York or LA or anywhere like,
Hmm.
you know, I guess traditionally cool, but like it's definitely not, it feels like a place that, you know, 10 to 12-year-old girls or 8 to 12-year-old girls certainly are still pretty hype on, based on all the birthday gifts and little knickknacks I see around. But I will say this actual, like, this work, 100% would, like, okay, so my daughter doesn't have a phone or social media, thank
Good
God,
on you.
since
Yeah.
I, for as long as I can hang on to that.
Smart.
But if she did, or if I showed her this, which I will, she would love it. The ASMR, the oh my God. As soon as I saw the fingers in the goop or whatever,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
that'll
like,
get
this
you.
is yeah, she's 100% in on this.
That's awesome. You know what? I love to hear that. Kudos to your daughter for keeping up the age-old tradition of dragging your parents into a Claire's.
Hey,
That's a
I mean,
beautiful
and like three for
experience.
one earrings for, you know, questionably pierced ears is still a thing.
That is great. That's great to hear. No, I honestly haven't kept up with Claire's very much personally because I don't really go into malls anymore. But that was one thing that interested me about this campaign is that they're launching this line of products that you're supposed to sort of use to make ASMR on your own. It's like slime, which Jen Alpha already loves. But
Sure.
then they're also setting up ASMR stations inside some of its stores for kids to go in and use it there in
Listen or to
stores.
create or both.
I think to create and to listen, probably, which I don't know how well that's going to work and whether people are going to want to do it. But I
Sounds like a
think,
mess. Oh, be the 400th person to put your fingers into this slime.
yeah, but others have made profit off of that, like the Slime Factory or whatever it's called. Do you know about this?
Nope.
Okay, well, it's basically what you would imagine. It's like a big warehouse full of slimes, and everybody's using the same slimes.
It's like a petri dish. It's a petri
Yeah,
dish
it's
of
like
disease.
you need to have two hand sanitizers in your back pocket at all times.
Like a kindergarten class, basically.
Yeah, basically. Gross, but I did think that was interesting in terms of like what Claire's is trying to do in order to convince people to come into the mall. Which honestly, I think they have a good pitch for that anyway, because like I wouldn't really, if I were still a kid, I would still want the experience of being in the Claire's rather than like ordering Claire's online. That just doesn't feel like the point of Claire's. But I think that they need more of, clearly, like people aren't hanging out in malls anymore. They need a way to like convince people to come in person.
It sounds like their version of what a lot of retailers are doing. Like I've talked to some menswear slash, like I remember whether it was Huckberry opening stores in Chicago or in Washington and around DC, or Tecovas, the Western brand, talking about their stores, how there's like a bar in every store, and like how their CEO, David Lafitte, was saying how like the idea is to create a relaxing space that feels, you know, fun or engaging to hang out in. Like you don't feel like a hard sold, you know, the adult version of this is like, oh, a drink and some good tunes and maybe like just a cool vibe to hang out, and maybe I'll look at some cowboy boots or whatever. I don't know. But like
Hmm.
that kind of thing I can see, you know, for kids, like the idea of let's go do this and then be overwhelmed by the walls at Claire's like everyone else used to be. But there's a bit of experience, more experience. And I think that's something that a lot of retailers are doing.
I think that going to the Claire's is a rite of passage, and someone should go to this ASMR experience and tell us how much of a health hazard it seemed to be. Jeff,
Don't
what's
go
your
to the
second
food
pick?
court right after.
No, definitely not.
Okay, my second pick is Pinterest. So Pinterest came out with a brand new campaign a couple of weeks ago, probably a few weeks ago now, if this is airing, late-ish April. And the first spot, which is not the spot I'm going to talk about, but the first spot was kind of like, it was called How Did They Do It? And it was kind of like this, like, footage from like the 80s and 90s, frankly, like when I grew up, and like people were doing things, but they weren't recording it all the time, or they weren't, or weren't liking.
How did they do it? Back in the olden times. How did they live their lives without posting about it?
Hindsight's 2020, but it wasn't the dreamland that everyone sort of is harking back to, but it was cool. What I want to talk about is the newest one, which is called Get Festive.
Honestly, I'm kind of embarrassed about how much it costs.
All right, guys, here's the top 10 things you can't live without.
Pinterest, in my mind, has kind of always been sort of like the red logoed stepchild of the social media platforms. It's like that you have pin boards instead of posts. There's not really the same status chasing likes and feeds, at least from how I've seen it. But it's long pitched itself as kind of this lone outpost of positivity in a social sphere that full of kind of like mental illness inducing addiction, anxiety, and like fake lives. And so as you saw, the new tagline is interesting because it's like the best thing you can find online is a reason to go offline. And the idea that, these girls are kind of doom scrolling in the dark, and like one just sort of keels over
in their
out
sad dorm room.
Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're on Pinterest. We're gonna get outfits to go out.
To go to, let me just say, a party in the dark woods in a disco blazer. Like, what is happening in this? That's not an experience I had in college.
No woods parties for you?
Not a one.
One thing when I wrote about this, this is the first brand campaign under their new CMO, Claudine Cheever, who came over from Amazon somewhat recently. I want to say like 6 months ago or so, under a year. And one of the questions that came up when I was kind of writing this was like, that's kind of counterintuitive, because really, like, the product, our attention is kind of the product for every social platform, right? Like, we've all figured this out. This is like the big discussion. It's like, oh, and there was a class action, and Meta and Google were negligent for making like design features that were addictive. So that idea that our attention, the longer we're on the platform, the more valuable we are to these platforms. The whole idea of like, use our platform to get the hell offline and have a better, like, live your life, whatever, seems a little counterintuitive in that dynamic. And, Claudine was telling me that, like, if you listen, this is a quote from her. She said, if you listen to Gen Z about why they come, they say that Pinterest is where I can figure out who I want to be, not who the internet tells me I'm supposed to be. That sentiment resonates with a much broader audience. The opportunity with the brand campaign was to take a much more pointed, clear stance on that. The internet should be there to help you, and it should be about time well spent, not a lot of time spent, which I kind of liked. But I did want to ask you about this, listening to Gen Z, because as an old man, I listen to Gen Z every month. So tell me what you think of both
of
that and maybe the spot.
I have mixed feelings about this. I'll start by saying I am definitely a Gen Z Pinterest user. I fall into that category. I love Pinterest. I use it a lot obviously for outfits. That's what everyone's going there for. But also, I use it to like brainstorm craft concepts. I have a crafts folder. Obviously, I have my dream wedding folder. No comment on that. Whatever. We all have to do it sometimes.
Party in the woods?
Not yet. Maybe after this ad. I'm going to say something that's just completely my conjecture, but my experience using Pinterest, to me, it seems like, well, okay, I don't buy that Pinterest is not supposed to be addictive. I think, like you said, I mean, it's the attention economy, and all of these different, even if Pinterest is not really a traditional social media site, I mean, it's designed to keep you scrolling through pins. It has some of the same features as the features that were brought up in that lawsuit. Like, for instance, infinite scroll. Pinterest also has that, where there's no like endpoint to your scrolling if you're on the explore page. I do think it's definitely less addictive, but to me, it feels more like Pinterest's business model is becoming centered around getting you to buy things through their affiliate links, as opposed to maximizing the time that you're spending on the site. Like, niche criticism, but something I've noticed is that Pinterest, literally the tap function is super sensitive and designed to make you like accidentally tap on ads or mistake ads for actual pins that users have made, so that it's constantly like redirecting you to Temu or Amazon or somewhere that you didn't want to go. Like, I just wanted to look at this nail design. I didn't want to buy a pack of 24 bedazzled nail gems on Amazon. So this ad for me is like, I see what they're trying to do with it, but I'm not really sure if the right strategy for them is to act like they're
High and mighty.
somehow outside of the, yeah, it gives like kind of a high and mighty vibe, because I'm not really buying that they're genuinely trying to keep people off
Interesting.
the internet, you know?
That's a really good point. I sort of tend to lean towards, I'll say, buying into it a bit. Because I'm not really a strong Pinterest user. 90% of my Pinterest use is like clicking on links my wife's texted me and like being like,
Yeah.
this is what we should do in the yard. All right. And,
I think that's my girlfriend's experience with Pinterest too. It's just wading through the 25,000 pins that I sent.
nice. But the mechanism, it's interesting you say about the infinite scroll, because I think the mechanism that gives me, or the lack of the mechanism of kind of affirmation, like likes and that kind of thing, makes me give them more benefit of the doubt when it comes to that angle of being, we're about positivity and we're about, helping your life outside the off the internet. But it is interesting, like the shopping and the idea that even if there's less time spent on Pinterest, the brand opportunity is just as big or bigger. That's definitely something they're leaning in on. Like Claudine said to me as well, like, even though we're there to help you get offline, you're going to plan things, you're going to buy things, you're going to be making a lot of decisions before you go live that life offline. And I think that in that is the kind of rub or the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Pinterest, and I think it's just, again, speculation, but I feel like it's better for you than other social media platforms.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a way they could have handled this ad that was less like in your face with the sort of, we are better than other, we are less harmful, because I feel like if they just sort of showed people like using Pinterest to inspire them, like making a brunch plan or designing some,
Yeah.
I don't know if it needed to really center so hard around that aspect of like, you are depressed on other social media, try our social media instead.
Like, if it didn't have, like, I don't even know if it was TikTok or Reels, but I mean, it was a pretty explicit, like,
Yeah.
I am depressed because I'm using this other
Scrolling.
platform, and now I'm happy because I used this
Come
platform.
scroll with us.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's a good point. I like that. Now I'm interested in what your second pick is.
I'm taking us back to Adidas that we mentioned at the top with an innovation that I learned about last week that really interested me as someone who can barely run a mile without falling down on my face. And that is this sort of race among sports brands to design the next super elite long distance running shoe. This sort of came to the world's attention on April 26th when the Kenyan runner Sebastian Sawe became the first person ever to run a sub 2-hour marathon at the London Marathon. In that race, his runner-up also ran a sub 2, and then the women's world record setter was, all three of those people were wearing Adidas's new shoe, which is the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro Evo 3.
Adios, I like
Short
that.
and sweet name. And this is the latest edition of Adidas's special line that's dedicated to long distance race day shoes, which they've been working on for like 3 years now. So after the race, I connected with their team to talk about how they created this shoe. And I learned that they basically have an entire crew that's devoted to just working on making the fastest shoe ever, which in the London Marathon, the Evo 3 basically became the fastest shoe to ever be worn, just given the fact that it was a sub 2-hour marathon. And there is so much design thinking that goes into a shoe like this. I learned, for example, that the average Adidas running shoe is about 230 grams. This shoe weighs 97 grams, which for context is less than a bar of soap. It's less than 4 batteries. One of their design team leads told me that when they handed the boxes of shoes to the athletes were like, this is just an empty box. You didn't give me any shoes, because it didn't feel like there was anything in the box. The upper material of the shoe was inspired by a ripstop fabric used in kite surfing. And then the bottom is a 39 millimeter stack of foam, which, by the way, is like really, really tall stack of foam on the bottom of the shoe. That's also somehow extremely light. And overall, it's just this wild innovation in the shoe space.
The moment where sub 2 really became a topic was when we had conversations with Sebastian, have him on the ground here in Herzog, and really understanding what are the elements that will allow us to push his performance was the biggest trigger point in the entire journey towards sub 2.
But what really interested me from reporting this out is learning how much of a huge brand moment this is for Adidas, and also how much every competitor of Adidas is vying for this golden moment in the spotlight. So, for example, Nike has been doing it for years with their Alpha Fly line. On has their own version. Hoka is doing it. Everyone really wants to win this metaphorical race of designing the next elite shoe. And for Adidas, that's good for business. For example, in Q1, which they recently published their financial results, their running shoe sales were up 10% year over year. But when I was talking to the Adidas design team, they told me that they also see this as a stage to sort of prove that they're not just a shoe brand, but an innovation brand. And that is good for their overall image. And I would say Nike has kind of cornered the market on that identity for a while, but Adidas wants more into that, that marker of just being a company that's on the cutting edge of designing the next truly innovative shoe that has never been seen before. And you can tell they're already benefiting from the press of this Sebastian Solway moment. They have a BTS video on YouTube with more than 500,000 views, multiple TikToks with millions of views featuring the shoe. And I really loved something that Mark Mikowski, who is Adidas's SVP of innovation, told me. And he said that marathon racing is, in our industry, a bit like F1 in the automotive industry, in that it's the scene where you prove just how much you've been working in the background to come up with something that's going to be the next big thing in racing. So, I'm curious, Jeff, if this is something you've reported on before. Are you tapped into the marathon running and brand shoe design race?
What I like about this, not only obviously the shoe innovation, how they're talking about it, but specifically what you just were talking about, the behind the scenes video, the TikTok, this innovation arms race in running shoes is kind of like a brand content goldmine. And it has been. I mean, I feel like the first one I can think of is the Nike's 2017 Doc Breaking 2, which was a then failed attempt to break a 2-hour marathon, or their subsequent series, which I think was on Prime, called Breaking 4, which was Faith Kipyegon's, sorry if I mispronounced that, her quest to become the first woman to break the 4-minute mile. People love watching it's basically reality TV in a sneaker context. I mean, to the F1 comparison, I don't know if people watch marathons like they watch F1. In fact, I do know that. I do know they don't. But the idea that, especially, okay, for someone like me, it's what's the drive to survive? These brands can kind of create their own sort of mini versions of drive to survive when it comes to the equipment because F1 is a lot about fine margins, right? You have the greatest runners, but when they get to a certain point, it's so close. creating those finer margins through innovation is the story, or a story, a very compelling story. And like their ability to tell that story, I mean, could be huge. I think I looked this up just before we got on, but like the Breaking Two, and this is the Nike 2017 doc, that they live streamed that event where they were like, so they did these bits where they were, you know, chronicling the build up and everything. And then the live stream of the event had more than 20 million viewers and racked up 2 trillion social impressions months before the doc even aired on Nat Geo. So that's the potential, I think, from a brand perspective. And I actually, for our Most Innovative Companies issue, I spoke to Adidas's chief creative officer, Alistair Willis, and he told me that, like, to your point around like how like the brand halo around all this, like that this is one thing that the Adidas has really started focusing a lot more on, and that's the link between sport innovation and streetwear. So for the longest time, right, like Adidas Originals were maybe like the Samba and all like these, that was where they were making a lot of their money. I mean, post Yeezy, like this is like the style side and not so much the sport side. But, you know, he looked back and he was talking about like, you know, the Samba was like the best, you know, indoor soccer shoe for eons. And that it's that heritage that makes it so classic and cool and whatever. And for so many people. So, and I'm quoting him here. He said, these two elements, the two sides of our brand, absolutely go hand in hand. Like the more the company engages its DNA as a sports brand and this innovation, the more its streetwear can build on that legacy. So I feel like it'll be interesting to see how like this kind of thing, you know, what the halo of that is overall for Adidas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's so fascinating. And Alistair told me too, he was very upfront about the fact, he was like, yeah, this fully is a race. We're all in it to win it. And the Sub 2 was just a huge moment. Like it's basically the moon landing of shoe design. So a big win for Adidas in the first quarter of 2026, but they've got another big moment coming up this summer too.
According to a Wall Street Journal story, this year's 2026 World Cup will generate an extra $10.5 billion in global ad spending in the second quarter of this year, a gain of 1.1% compared to non-tournament years, which doesn't sound very significant, according to a projection by marketing research firm Wark Media. Now, that's an extra 10.5 billion on top of whatever's being spent. And that's all just the cost of buying ad space, media space, and doesn't account for the cost of actually making the ads and other brand work and fan experiences and all that. And like it has before, Adidas has been a major official World Cup sponsor for eons, since the beginning of time, in my loose interpretation of the beginning of time. Nike's always been like the outsider, kind of doing a World Cup adjacent stuff. Like you kind of know it's about the World Cup, but it's not officially about the World Cup. But Adidas has always been the real deal, the official, like logos everywhere. And this year, like we mentioned at the top, they're bringing together a collection of famous faces to create a vibe that, I don't know, it creates this fantasy world. Now, the spot is called Backyard Legends, and it stars Timothy Chalamet. We get him. He's very manic. We don't know what city he's in. He's just like, he's obviously like orchestrating a meetup of some kind. And I don't know, we've seen a couple clips, but it basically is like athletes and entertainers competing it gets around to this neighborhood soccer match being played on like a street court. Bad Bunny's there. Lionel Messi's there to watch Trinity Rodman and Jude Bellingham show up. They're in the car with Chalamet. I mean, and what I also liked is kind of like the throwback AI/VFX versions of David Beckham and Zinedine Zidane and Del Piero. Like, I really like this. It kind of gives last World Cup in 2022, there was a similar sort of fantasy world, like we're all buddies vibe. It was called Family Reunion, and it was like the artist Stormzy was kind of living in a house with like Messi and Karim Benzema and Heung-min Son and Jude Bellingham again. It's I don't know. There's a lot of it's a very fun spot. It's like it's like over 5 minutes long. Grace, what did you think of this?
Well, I feel like I need to start off by getting ahead of the fact that I don't know anything about soccer.
Okay.
I've never watched the World Cup. And while I was watching all of these ads, it was like seeing a bunch of guys that clearly I should know about, but I don't know anything about why they're significant, which honestly, I feel like almost helped me view these ads more objectively because it was, I feel like I could tell when there was just like a random celebrity showing up and when they had actually incorporated that cameo into a story that made even me think, whoa, that's so cool that this guy who I couldn't even say his name has appeared, like creating that feeling for me. And this one I think is a great example of that. I loved that Adidas made its own lore for this video. I think that's the strongest thing they did is create their own story. It has like 3 characters who are just kids. Those guys aren't famous, right?
Well, you're asking me. You're the Z here. I was thinking that. I was like, well, I know all the footballers.
No,
are these 3 supposed to? Am I supposed to know? Are they like creators or something? I
don't know.
I don't think so. I kind of did. I did some digging. I don't think so, but like, don't.
Yeah, I've never heard of
it.
Clive. But
right.
Yeah, I just think it was great the way they built up that lore and made their own new story. Timothy Chalamet was a great choice for this. I do wonder has he been forgiven for his opera comments? That was kind of the first thing I thought of is like, are we past that cancellation moment for him? I feel like
does anyone care? I mean, not anyone.
It created like an internet
fans.
Firestorm against him. But I'm sure that people are just like, whatever.
A firestorm of like,
reactionaries.
I mean, everyone loves a firestorm, but like Chalamet, I've got a note here, but like one thing, he's a legit soccer fan. Like he is not a celebrity mercenary here. There was a Instagram post. I think it was, we're recording this on May 7th. I think it was like last week or very recently where he did some video where he was supporting the girls softball team at his old high school, which is like LaGuardia or something in New York. I don't live in New York. You don't live in New York, whatever. His high school. And, but he was wearing this warm up from his childhood soccer club, Manhattan Kickers, which he played with, I forget, there was 2 really well-known players, and one is Joe Gomez, who plays on Liverpool. So he's like, and there's been pictures of him supporting, not like, glory hunting, like the top teams. And, there's a lot of celebrities that like whoever's winning that year, they'll be like, hey, they'll be at the games with their shirts and
Sure.
Like Drake's famous for basically, doing the tour of whoever. Oh, I got a Chelsea shirt. Oh, I got a Man City shirt. But Chalamet is like a legit soccer fan, and to have him in this spot in his sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say like Marty Supreme mode, but like very manic and very like, he's like hustle guy.
He's like the ringleader of their opposing team.
Totally. But to your point, and I want to ask you about this because the footballers, like, it's like, oh, Bellingham's kind of impatient and Jude Bellingham's impatient in the back of the car. That's funny to me. But how you related to it, what I liked about this whole story and this whole kind of world they just kind of created is it ends when usually where the spot would happen. Like the whole, like the buildup is the fun and the spot ends before like the match even kicks off. And that was probably like broad strokes my favorite thing about it.
Yeah, that was great. A great choice because I think that you would have almost lost steam by carrying through the actual match. Like it's all in the suspense of what's gonna happen. I also thought there was a moment where, okay, don't kill me, but who is the famous soccer player who's with Bad Bunny at the end? Is it Beckham? Who is it?
That's Messi.
Okay.
Sitting up in the by the leaning on the car or whatever.
Yeah.
That's messy.
There was like a moment with him and Timothy where I thought that it was like genuinely well acted. I mean, probably because Timothy is there, but I was like, and I like that they used them in opposition with each other for that moment. That's where I'm like, oh, they used Messi and he had his big moment, but the way that he plays against Timothy makes him seem like a real person.
Hey, you were my backup plan.
And whoever directed this, I mean, it was created by, let me see here. It was Lola USA, which is as of April, it's like a new, I want to forgive my term, but Franken agency created as a result of the Omnicom holding company merger. They've combined a bunch of agencies, and this was 180 US and Adam and Eve DDB New York offices have created this new agency, and they're behind it. But anyone who's seen any ads that Messi appears in ever, like any of the Michelob Ultra Super Bowl stuff, the crazy weird Lay's spot with Beckham and Steve Carell that just came out, these are whoo. So to your point about like the natural vibe of what they've created here is a feat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something I noticed is that obviously these guys aren't actors. And in a lot of the other spots, it's sort of like everyone is doing hero worship for them, which of course earned. But this feels like something new, seeing them in a position where they're, he's supposed to be just like a chill guy watching a match. And I thought that really worked well. But tell us, Jeff, about the other Adidas ads from years past that we should know about, because I certainly don't know about them.
Tell us, old person. What about all the other ads? Okay, before I don't usually wear a scarf, but like this is my Canada soccer scarf for our World Cup segment, I have to say. So this did make me think, because honestly, at first it reminded me of Nike work. This kind of bringing these superstars down to the level of everyone else, to actual fans. I mean, there was the old Guy Ritchie spot from 2008. Then there was one in 2016 called The Switch with Ronaldo. That's fantastic.
Es uma criança.
I'm Cristiano Ronaldo.
But it's really this like the divide between professional athletes, in particular professional footballers, and fans is so vast now that I feel like some of this brand work that works to make them more relatable, obviously in ridiculous situations, is awesome. But I associate it more with Nike. But so I wanted to go back and look at Adidas's World Cup work of this century, like so since 2000, what does it look like? And 20 years ago now, and maybe this is on purpose, maybe I'm being an idiot, this is on purpose, but there was a spot called Jose.
1, 2 y 3. Cissé, Kaká, Zidane, Beckham, Defoe, Can, Messi, Beckenbauer.
Backyard Legends is definitely a direct descendant from Jose. Absolutely. Then in 2010, they did another mashup, but it was definitely a culture thing. And this was called Cantina. And it basically took the Mos Eisley Cantina scene from Star Wars, the original one, and brought in like Snoop Dogg, a bunch of footballers, Jay Baruchel, the Gallagher brothers, a Daft Punk, all mixed in. And I kind of love this one.
Oh, you want some? Step up.
2014 was The Dream, and that was directed by Fernando Mariez, who directed award-winning film City of God, and it had a new Kanye track at the time called God Level, and that was Lionel Messi. It was more serious. It was intense. It was a kind of dramatized look at the training and pressure on these stars.
God level.
2018 was my least favorite. This was a spot called Creativity is the Answer, which sounds like the name of a panel at any advertising conference. And it was kind of a mishmash of soccer stars, Messi, of course, with like Carly Kloss and Pharrell Williams. And it's all over the place. And unlike what I was talking about this year's ad, it kind of tries to create the event. And I feel like going in retrospect, if they had done a spot building up to whatever they were trying to go in this mess of an ad, would have been much cooler. 2022 was the family reunion spot I talked about earlier with Stormzy, and they're all in the house, and it's very quirky and funny.
You can't forget about your boy Storms.
And out of all of those, I have to say, if I was ranking them, I feel like this year's is a contender for number one. I don't know. What do you think? Okay, I raced through those. Grace, tell me what your favorite was, and then maybe where and then where you thought this year's measured up.
Great question. Okay, well, yeah, I'm torn on favorites too, but I agree. I think my top three are definitely this year's, Jose, and Cantina. Sure. Snoop Dogg, by the way, in the Cantina one, hilarious. Incredible choice to put him in that situation.
I don't think anyone would have Snoop Dogg wielding a lightsaber on their World Cup advertising bingo card.
No, but it felt to me like that was something that he had dreamed of doing and was really excited to be there.
Like,
so,
if I'm signing on for this,
really
I'm doing I got a lightsaber.
Yeah, that was like in his rider. I think with Jose and then Timothy's this year, what I really like is the fact that Adidas made its own new story and invented its own characters to star. And the fact that in these we do have cameos of famous players, but they are like serving a fresh narrative that has been created for that. They are not just appearing out of nowhere. They're players in a broader advertising game.
Right.
And same thing with Cantina. And I think Cantina it's not a news story, but it's like using the old story of Star Wars to create something new and obviously playing on the nostalgia of that.
A bit of an unprecedented novelty there. Like, you couldn't do it again, but I'm trying to think of, particularly for a giant event like the World Cup, like a brand that has used such iconic IP, Star Wars, literally a scene from the movie, and cut it, for their purposes for this. I can't think of another example, Super Bowl or otherwise.
Yeah, I started wondering like what the cost must have been to use that clip. Like, I have no idea what the system would have been to figure that out. But
yeah, around those years though, they did have, and this might have been part of the. Maybe it was part of the payment plan for this clip, but I know Adidas Originals for a while had a lot of Star Wars licensed stuff. Like a lot.
Okay, interesting.
Like collections and whatnot.
That makes sense. But I think, okay, so after watching these ads and then a few others from this year that Jeff and I were talking about independently off the podcast, I feel that was a through line that I noticed with the ads that felt more successful to me was where there's a fresh narrative or a fresh spin on something nostalgic. And then it seemed like there was another camp of ads that felt a lot less successful to me, where it's kind of like, it feels as if the directors were sort of trying to throw in like as many cameos and exciting appearances as possible, but they're not really landing for me because it's not really in service of anything else. And so it kind of just feels like something that's been done a million times before. And I think that's a huge pitfall in this advertising space, is just the fact that there are so many cliches, and it seems like it's kind of hard for a lot of big companies to avoid them. Like, I feel like there were a lot of themes that have been done over and over again. For example, the fans watching from home in different spots around the world,
Right.
or fans coming together in the stands and feeling patriotic of their country, or, you know, there are like different genres that have been done 1,000 times, and maybe there's something new that can be added, but it feels like a lot of these brands kind of just roll them out again year after year.
Well, we do have another like 2 months of World Cup stuff that will be rolling out, both, you know, the hype before the tournament starts, how, you know, to our point about are they going to continue this, how things might add on or continue during the tournament. Maybe the Lay's Epic Watch Party gets better. I don't know. Odds low. But I guess we'll see. We have plenty of time. This is not the Super Bowl. This is not a one-shot deal. This is 2 months. Does watching all these ads and just chatting about it as a complete, you know, non-watcher make you more interested?
Yes, it actually definitely did. I started to feel like I was missing out on a big thing that everybody else is a part of. It gave me FOMO. And that feels like probably what they are hoping to achieve.
It feels like a brand win on multiple levels.
Yeah, honestly, maybe I will be tuning in this year and learning some of these people's names, but probably if I do tune in, I will not remember that at all.
Just remember,
but it could be a first step.
Just remember Jonathan David. He's the Canadian striker.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Just for you, I'll try.